Emily's heels slammed against the slick alley as the shadows closed in. Her breath came in ragged bursts, and the echo of footsteps behind her was unnerving. Too precise, too fast. Two men, faces hidden beneath black masks, were gaining. Panic surged, but she forced herself to keep moving, to keep thinking. She'd survived this long. She wouldn't falter now. A hand clamped onto her shoulder, spinning her around. She froze. Jin-Ho Kwon stood there, gun drawn, eyes like steel. Time slowed as he assessed the attackers with a glance. In one swift motion, he fired, and the men crumpled, weapons clattering on the pavement. Emily's knees nearly gave way as adrenaline surged. "Move!" Jin-Ho hissed, guiding her toward the penthouse. Every instinct screamed danger, but his calm, controlled presence made her feel alive and terrified all at once. Her voice trembled. "Why me?" "Because they think you're a weakness," he said, low and steady. "But weaknesses die. You won't." She followed him, heart hammering. The penthouse doors slid open, revealing marble floors and the faint scent of jasmine. It was a world apart from the chaos outside, but the serenity was just a mask. Emily pressed her hands to her face, trying to calm the pounding of her heart. 3 years ago, she had been dragged from a darkened street corner in Busan, bloodied and terrified by this same man. Then, she had believed marriage to Jin-Ho Kwon would be love, a shield in a world intent on devouring her. But the years had taught her the truth. He was cold, distant, always measured. It protected her, yes, but at the cost of her freedom, her voice, her presence. Now, watching him reload with lethal precision, Emily realized she had never truly seen him. Not the man beneath the myth of the kingpin, not the man capable of silent devotion. "Why do you keep me at arm's length?" she asked finally, her voice barely audible. Jin-Ho's eyes darkened, and for a fraction of a second, the stoic mask slipped. "Because I can't lose you," he said. "I lost someone before, someone I loved. I won't let it happen again." "Who?" she whispered. "Someone I failed," he admitted. "I learned my lesson too late. You won't be my failure." Emily's chest tightened. This was the man behind the cold exterior. The man who had shielded her not just from enemies, but from a world he believed she couldn't survive alone. Her emotions tumbled. Fear, relief, curiosity, anger, all collided at once. The penthouse door rattled violently, dragging her back to reality. "They're here," Jin-Ho muttered, moving like a predator toward the threat. Emily instinctively ducked behind him, watching shadows shift as the intruders slipped in, silent and precise. Jin-Ho's gun barked, cutting the tension with brutal efficiency. Emily's hands trembled, but she remembered the small lessons he had shown her over the years: stance, awareness, reaction. She raised her fists, feeling a spark of power she hadn't acknowledged before. When the last intruder fell, Emily collapsed to the floor, chest heaving. Jin-Ho knelt beside her, hands steadying her shoulder. "You're learning," he said almost teasingly, though there was warmth in his eyes. "Stronger than you think." She looked up at him, eyes wide. "I don't want to just survive. I want to live. With you. Not just under your protection." He studied her, weighing her words. Then, with a slow exhale, he led her to a hidden vault within the penthouse. A collection of photographs, journals, and meticulous plans. Every page chronicled his fear, devotion, and love, proof of the silent obsession he had carried for her. "You kept all of this?" she asked, awestruck. "I did," he admitted, "because I needed you to see me, to understand me. I couldn't let my fear destroy you, or us." Emily's heart raced as she absorbed the depth of his devotion. Years of misunderstanding, of emotional distance, suddenly reframed. Fear had dictated his every move, but beneath it was love, fierce and unspoken. Her eyes filled, not with tears yet, but with recognition. This man had lived in the shadows for her sake, and she had never known. "Then I want to fight too," she said, voice steadying. "No more hiding. No more pretending I'm just a fragile piece in your world." He nodded once, sharply, the first faint smile tugging at the corner of his lips. "Then we fight together," he said. The neon-lit streets of Seoul shimmered below, alive and chaotic. Danger was omnipresent, but inside, a fragile alliance formed. An understanding that survival alone wasn't enough. To live, to love, to fight for each other, they would need to become equals. Emily drew in a deep breath, determination hardening in her chest. She turned to Jin-Ho. "Let's start," she said. He led her toward the penthouse armory, a fortress within a fortress. Weapons, plans, and security measures lined the walls. But more importantly, it was a symbol. They would not simply survive. They would dominate, protect, and reclaim their lives together. Emily glanced at him as they stepped inside. The man who had terrified, protected, and bewildered her for 3 years was now something new. A partner, an ally, a mirror of the courage she was finally willing to embrace. The first line of their war had begun, not with a scream or a fall, but with a choice, to face the chaos of Seoul side by side. Emily clenched her fists, heart thrumming, ready for the battles to come. And as she followed Jin-Ho deeper into the fortress, the penthouse no longer felt like a gilded cage. It felt like the starting point for something dangerous, exhilarating, and entirely their own. Emily followed Jin-Ho through the hidden corridors of the penthouse, her heart still hammering from the alley attack. Every corner, every polished wall felt both familiar and alien. Luxury layered over danger, comfort intertwined with constant threat. She glanced at him, trying to read the lines of his face in the dim light. Jin-Ho moved with effortless precision, his gaze constantly scanning, alert for any signs of intrusion. "Why didn't you tell me before?" she asked quietly, voice carrying the weight of 3 years of misunderstanding. "About your feelings? About all of this?" She gestured toward the journals and photographs they had just passed. He didn't answer immediately. His eyes lingered on a security monitor showing the streets below. Then, with a quiet sigh, he said, "Because fear makes people silent. I thought if I stayed distant, kept you at arm's length, you'd be safe. But I was wrong. I wasn't protecting you. I was protecting myself from losing you." Emily's chest tightened. So all this coldness, all this distance, it was just fear. Fear and love, he admitted. 2 things that shouldn't coexist, but they do. And I failed at balancing them. She swallowed hard, emotions tangling inside her. Anger, longing, relief, they all collided. She had lived for years thinking she was alone in a gilded cage. And now, standing in the heart of his fortress, she realized the walls had been built from his own vulnerability, his own scars. "I'm not afraid anymore," she whispered. "Not of them. Not of this city. Not of you." Her words hung in the air, fragile but resolute. Jin-Ho finally allowed a small smile, faint but genuine. "Good," he said, "because they're not done with us yet." The neon glow from the streets below flickered through the windows, reflecting off the polished floors. Emily's eyes followed the light, and for a moment, she felt the weight of choice pressing against her. She could run, hide, pretend to be the protected wife. Or she could step into the storm with him, unafraid, unguarded. "Then we fight together," she said, repeating the vow she had made moments ago. Jin-Ho's hand briefly brushed hers, a subtle, grounding touch that carried more unspoken meaning than words ever could. They entered a secure armory, walls lined with weapons, tactical gear, and surveillance monitors. Emily's eyes widened as she took in the meticulous preparations. This was more than a home. It was a command center, a fortress, a war room. This is all yours?" she asked, awestruck. "It's ours now," Jin-Ho corrected, placing a reassuring hand on her shoulder. "And if we survive what's coming, it will always be ours." He pulled up a series of images on a monitor. Faces, locations, movements. The Hanul Syndicate had been watching, probing, testing weaknesses. They thought Emily's presence was an easy target to destabilize him, to force a mistake. But they had miscalculated. Emily leaned closer to the screen. "So what's the plan?" Jin-Ho's gaze met hers. "First, we prepare. They won't stop coming, and we can't just react anymore. We strike on our terms, not theirs." He handed her a small, tactical tablet. "Maps, escape routes, and enemy positions flickered across the screen. Emily traced a finger over the paths, absorbing the information. "I can help," she said, determination sharp in her voice. "I can fight, I can think, I can be part of this." He studied her for a long moment, seeing the steel beneath her fear. "You're serious?" "I've never been more serious in my life," she replied. Jin-Ho nodded, approvingly. "Then you'll need to trust me completely. And I need to trust you in return. One mistake, and we don't survive." Emily's lips pressed into a thin line, her resolve hardening. "I trust you," she said simply. Training began immediately. Jin-Ho moved with precision, showing her stances, movements, and defensive maneuvers. Emily's body burned from exertion, sweat dripping, heart pounding, but she welcomed it. This was no longer about surviving under his protection. It was about standing beside him, equal, capable, alive. Hours passed in a blur of motion, strategy, and whispered conversations. They discussed contingency plans, signals, and escape routes. And amid the tactical exchange, glimpses of vulnerability surfaced. Jin-Ho spoke rarely of himself, but Emily coaxed fragments out of him. Memories of losses, regrets, moments of doubt. She listened, not with pity, but with understanding. And each revelation pulled them closer, weaving trust into something tangible, something stronger than mere survival. By nightfall, they had crafted a plan, a careful, calculated counterattack designed to strike at the Hanul syndicate where they were weakest. Every detail mattered, every move calculated. But beyond the strategy, something more profound had formed. They were no longer protector and protected. They were partners. Equal, unflinching, ready. Emily paused near a window, looking out at the glittering skyline of Seoul. The city pulsed with life and danger in equal measure. Her reflection merged with the neon glow. Determined, fearless, ready. Jin-Ho joined her silently, eyes scanning the streets below. "Tomorrow," he said, voice low, "we end this. We make them regret ever thinking you were a weakness." Emily met his gaze. "And if it doesn't go as planned?" "Then we adapt," he replied, hand brushing hers again. "We fight. Together." The city hummed beneath them, unaware of the storm forming in the shadows. Emily's pulse raced, not from fear this time, but from exhilaration. She was no longer the woman hiding behind walls. She was a force, ready to stand in the line of fire, ready to reclaim her life, ready to love fiercely in a world that demanded survival at every turn. The night stretched on with preparation, strategy, and quiet moments of connection. They went over weapons, practiced movements, and reviewed intelligence repeatedly. Each repetition, each adjustment sharpened them, made them more lethal, more precise, more in sync. Finally, Jin-Ho paused, placing a hand on Emily's shoulder. "Rest," he commanded softly. "Tomorrow we fight. But tonight we remember why we're doing this. Not just to survive, but to be free. Together." Emily nodded, a sense of purpose washing over her. Her mind replayed the alley attack, the fear, the terror, but now it was tempered with resolve. She had seen the truth behind Jin-Ho's walls. She had chosen her path, and when the sun rose over Seoul, they would strike, not as master and pawn, not as protector and protected, but as equals. And in that moment, despite the looming danger, Emily allowed herself a small, rare smile. The fight was coming, but she was ready. They were ready. The night was thick with tension as Emily and Jin-Ho approached the outskirts of Seoul, the hum of distant traffic masking the quiet danger that lay ahead. The Hanul Syndicate's base loomed in the darkness, a warehouse on the edge of the industrial district, dim lights flickering like warning signs. Emily's heart pounded, a mixture of fear and adrenaline. Every step forward felt like stepping into a storm she had both anticipated and dreaded. Jin-Ho's hand brushed hers briefly, a grounding touch that reminded her she was not alone. "Stay close," he whispered. "Watch my signals, trust your instincts, and, above all, trust me." Emily nodded, tightening the grip on the compact pistol he had handed her earlier. Her training over the last hours, the drills, the strategy sessions, they were all leading to this. She no longer felt like a pawn in someone else's game. She was a player now, and she had chosen a fight. They reached the perimeter and paused behind a stack of crates. Through binoculars, Emily could see guards patrolling the grounds, moving in calculated patterns. She pointed at one of the sentries. "He's alone," she said softly. "I can take him silently." Jin-Ho's eyes flicked to hers, measuring. "Are you sure?" "Yes," she replied, heart steady despite the nerves. "I can do this." With a nod, he signaled her to move. Emily slipped into the shadows, careful, precise. Every step was a calculated risk, every breath measured. She moved like a shadow herself, blending with the darkness. Within moments, the guard was neutralized, and Emily signaled back to Jin-Ho. A small, proud smile tugged at the corners of her mouth. "Good," he muttered, a rare note of approval in his voice. "Now we go in together." They breached the warehouse doors simultaneously, moving as one unit. Inside, the space was vast and echoing, crates and machinery forming natural obstacles. The syndicate members were caught off guard, and chaos erupted. Shots rang out, the sound ricocheting off metal walls. Emily ducked behind a crate as bullets shredded the air near her. Her training kicked in. She returned fire with precision, each movement deliberate, each breath controlled. Jin-Ho moved beside her, a lethal shadow. He dispatched enemies with brutal efficiency. Every shot calculated, every move exact. Emily caught herself stealing glances at him, not just as a fighter, but as the man she had come to trust with her life. In the midst of gunfire and shouting, their synchronization felt natural, a silent language forged through hours of preparation. "Cover me," Jin-Ho shouted as he moved toward the center of the warehouse, where the syndicate's leader attempted to organize a counterattack. Emily moved into position, blocking a pair of gunmen and taking them down with rapid, precise shots. Adrenaline coursed through her, fear and excitement blending into a singular focus. She was no longer afraid. Jin-Ho ducked behind a steel beam as another guard charged him. Emily fired instinctively, hitting the man squarely in the chest. He crumpled, and she realized she had just saved Jin-Ho. Heat and pride surged through her, but there was no time to linger. The fight continued. The warehouse was chaos incarnate. Sparks from damaged machinery, shouted orders, the staccato of gunfire echoing through the cavernous space. Emily's breathing was steady, her mind sharp. She felt alive in a way she hadn't in years. Every nerve attuned to survival. Every action tethered to Jin-Ho's movements. They reached the leader, a burly man with a jagged scar across his face, barking orders as if sheer volume could control the storm. Jin-Ho moved in first, striking with precision, but the leader retaliated, catching him with a harsh punch. Emily didn't hesitate. She fired, hitting him square in the shoulder, giving Jin-Ho the opening he needed. Together, they subdued him, and for a fleeting moment, the warehouse was quiet, save for their heavy breathing. Emily looked at Jin-Ho. Sweat and grime streaked across both of them. We did it," she said, disbelief and exhilaration coloring her voice. Jin-Ho's gaze softened as he studied her. "No," he said quietly. "We did it together. That's the difference. We fight as equals. And now you see what I've seen all along. You are more than capable. You are unstoppable." Her chest tightened, emotions overwhelming. Relief, pride, fear, exhilaration, they all collided. She realized in that moment that the fear she had carried for years, the isolation, the longing for protection, it was gone, replaced by something far stronger: partnership. Love intertwined with power, trust fused with action. The syndicate had been neutralized, but the victory was more than physical. It was emotional, spiritual, the kind that reshaped boundaries and rewrote relationships. Emily looked at Jin-Ho, a spark of something raw and unguarded passing between them. She had entered the fight as his protected charge. She emerged as his equal, as a force to be reckoned with. They returned to the penthouse as dawn broke over Seoul. The city, oblivious to the storm that had passed on its outskirts, shimmered in pink and gold hues. Emily collapsed onto the couch, exhaustion pressing down, but her eyes were bright with life. Jin-Ho sat beside her, silently observing her. "You were incredible," he said softly, brushing a strand of hair from her face. "I've never seen anyone move like that and survive." Emily chuckled, a sound both weary and triumphant. "I told you, I'm not afraid anymore. Not of them. Not of this city. Not even of you." Jin-Ho's lips curved into a rare, genuine smile. "Good," he said, "because I've been hiding behind fear and control for too long. And you've shown me that love isn't just about protection. It's about trust, partnership, and equality." She reached for his hand, their fingers intertwining naturally. "Then we face the future together," she said. "No more walls. No more distance. Whatever comes, we face it side by side." For a moment, they sat in quiet victory, the hum of the city below a soothing contrast to the chaos they had endured. And in that quiet, a new understanding formed. They were no longer bound by fear, distance, or isolation. They were bound by choice, trust, and an unspoken, growing love that was fierce enough to survive the world outside their doors. As the sun rose over Seoul, painting the skyline in vibrant hues, Emily looked out at the city, feeling a sense of empowerment she had never known. Jin-Ho's hand remained in hers, steady and reassuring. The fight had tested them, but it had also transformed them, and they were ready for whatever came next. "Perfect. Here's batch 4, 1000 plus words. The emotional resolution, intimate moments, and satisfying ending, including a natural CTA for YouTube or video format." The penthouse was quiet now, save for the hum of the city below. Emily sank onto the couch, exhaustion heavy in her limbs, her body still buzzing with adrenaline. Jin-Ho stood near the window, arms crossed, eyes scanning the streets one last time before letting himself breathe. The storm outside had passed, and for the first time in years, they were safe, not just physically but emotionally. Emily watched him for a long moment. The man who had terrified and protected her, who had built walls around both of their hearts, now seemed human, vulnerable, open. And despite everything, despite the violence and danger, she felt a wave of warmth sweep through her. "I can't believe we survived that," she said softly, voice tinged with awe. "I didn't know if I'd make it." Jin-Ho turned to her, his expression unreadable at first, then softening. "Neither did I," he admitted. "But you fought like no one else I've ever seen. You didn't run, you didn't falter. You became my equal." Emily's chest tightened. She had spent years feeling invisible, trapped, unsure of her place. But now, standing or sitting here in the aftermath, she realized she had never felt more alive. "I wasn't invisible," she whispered. "Not anymore. And neither are you, Jin-Ho. We're together now. Truly together." He moved closer, slowly, deliberately, the tension in the room palpable. "I wanted to tell you this for so long," he said, voice low, almost a growl. "I love you. Not as a boss. Not as a protector. As me. As the man who has been scared of losing you every single day." Emily's eyes glistened. Years of loneliness, of yearning for connection, now poured out in that moment. "I love you too," she breathed. "Not as someone who needs protection, but as someone who wants to be by your side. Always." The distance that had defined their marriage for 3 long years dissolved in an instant. Jin-Ho cupped her face gently, leaning in until their foreheads touched, sharing the unspoken words that had been trapped for so long. And when their lips met, it was more than passion. It was release, understanding, and the culmination of every fear, every fight, every unspoken moment between them. Hours passed like minutes. They talked, laughed softly, and for the first time, allowed themselves to dream. The walls of the penthouse no longer felt like a gilded cage. They were a sanctuary, a place where love and strength coexisted, where past trauma could be acknowledged, but no longer defined their relationship. Emily picked up the divorce papers she had once prepared in despair, her fingers brushing over the ink. She stared at them for a long moment, then let them slip into the fire in the fireplace. Watching them burn, she felt the weight of doubt, fear, and isolation dissolve. This was no longer about survival. This was about life, love, and partnership on their terms. Jin-Ho pulled her close, resting his chin on the top of her head. "You were right," he murmured. "No more walls. No more hiding. We face the world together, side by side. Always." Emily smiled against his chest, heart full. "Always," she echoed. Outside, Seoul stirred with the promise of a new day. But inside, the penthouse was quiet, intimate, safe. The city's chaos could wait. For now, they had each other, and that was enough. As they settled into each other's embrace, Emily reached for her phone and sent a quick message to a trusted friend. "We're alive. We're free. And we're together." Then, as the soft morning light spilled across the room, Jin-Ho and Emily shared a quiet, lingering kiss, a promise of tomorrow and every day after. They had survived the violence, conquered fear, and most importantly, found each other. Love, once suffocated by silence and danger, now thrived fiercely and unashamedly. Emily leaned back slightly, her hand brushing over Jin-Ho's. "You know," she said with a playful grin, "I think we make a pretty unstoppable team." Jin-Ho chuckled, a deep, rumbling sound she had rarely heard. "The most unstoppable," he corrected, "and we're just getting started." If you loved our story, don't forget to hit like, subscribe, and leave a comment telling us what part made your heart race. Trust me, there's more to come, and you won't want to miss it.